And then they do the whole really bad exposition again. She's like, you know, it's really good that we want things that are good for the world, isn't it? And they're like, yeah. And like, we gotta make sure that good things happen, people get what they need. Yeah, one world, one people. Yeah, one world, one people. It's like, shut the fuck up.
It doesn't make any fucking sense.
That's how we get one world, one people, by blowing up others and
if we
enacting
blow up
violence.
all the people, there'll only be one person left.
Which takes us to
big brain.
To the next part of this episode, which is going to be so much fun to talk about. Let me tell you.
Oh
no!
This is the episode that killed so many Disney Plus subscriptions.
Dude, it was obvious this would have pissed off so many people, especially people I know. I'd be like, uh-oh, because it's just a bunch of stuff you listen to, and you're like, wait, what? Like, when did any of this happen? You're like, oh, that's the thing, it was a secret. But we open with a really weird, like, I'd like to talk to the writer about what the goal here was. They have a black kid say, hey, it's Black Falcon. And Falcon's like, no, it's just Falcon. And I'm like, why would anyone call you Black Falcon?
This scene stands in stark opposition to the message of the show, which is that race matters a lot.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I feel like
weird. The show seems to go in loads of different directions with this because, like, you know, Sam's final kind of realization of I'm going to wear the Captain America shield and I'm going to take on that mantle, even though people are going to judge me for it for being black and think that I shouldn't. It's like it tries to steer this middle path where it acknowledges all of these different grievances, but then tries to kind of push them aside so that he can take on the Captain America persona. But then it doesn't really have a coherent message in the end. It goes in two different directions. And it's like, this is an example of... Yeah, like they're trying to get across this point here really awkwardly that Sam just sees himself as, you know, Falcon. He doesn't define himself by his race, or he doesn't want to. But then his experiences over the course of the series try and pull him in that direction, especially when he meets Isaiah.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Go ahead.
Oh, I feel like Anthony Mackie weaseled that in because he's said something like that in the press. Like, I'm not. No. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was Idris Elba or somebody. But like the way he talks in the press about media and how we shouldn't make everything about race, blah blah blah. I feel like he knew the script was shit and like, just let me put this in to let people know, like, I'm not all about this race baiting bullshit. Like, I got some
maybe
common sense.
Yeah, it does feel like another person snuck in and added this.
Feels out of place. It really does.
It feels weird to me because, like, the reason why, for instance, it's Black Panther is because it's a literal Black Panther. Like, that's why he's called that.
But
Falcon, he's just a Falcon.
By the same note, however, if there were a new, like, Superman, and he's black, I could totally see people colloquially trying to separate him by going, well, it's Black Superman. I can see that possibly catching on when you wouldn't want it to be. You'd be like, no, can you just call me Superman? It's like, okay, well, you're the new Superman. You're whatever your name is. That could happen.
Morales isn't Black Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm suggesting is I'm looking for how it could have happened colloquially. Why would anyone call him Black Falcon? He's the only Falcon.
There's only one. Yeah, you there's no other Falcon to distinguish him from.
And again, there are Black Panthers. How many Black Falcons are there that are just like around in the wild? Is that like a common thing?
Yeah, so that was just odd. I was like, why did that just... Okay, anyway, moving on. And so I guess it's just time to go over this as a full history thing. Like, timeline-wise, it's hard to keep track of, but Erskine made a potion, right? Like, gotta be the perfect person to use this on. And Steve was found, because he's a legend. Used it on him. Erskine was killed, his serums were destroyed, and so it was left for us to assume that we ain't making that again, because he was like a genius who knew how to do it. Like, okay. Now, I might need a history lesson from any of you guys if you know more about this than I'm filling in, but like, Hydra were also working on super soldier serums, ? And they used one on Bucky?
Yeah.
Yes.
Zola did that instead of, or at least Winter Soldier says Zola did, like, after he fell off the train. It's kind of unclear exactly how his formulas worked or how successful they were, but they seem to have worked on Bucky, so...
Yeah,
they also produced those other, like, super soldiers that you saw in Civil War, like, were all kind of murdered by Zemo. So they were produced by Hydra as well, weren't they? They were like...
Those came from the formula
using
that
a serum that was with Tony with
Yeah,
Howard
with-
Stark.
Howard came up with those. They were stolen from him and used to make them.
Right.
There's probably gaps in this history to fill up. Unfortunately, it's hard to make more history because it's probably going to trample on something, because they've already kind of done it now. It's like whatever would have happened with a world with more super serum people, or more X, more Y, we should have probably heard about it. Like, the more films that go on, say for example they introduce the world-famous Winter Soldier assassin that everyone knows about and is terrified of and is a ghost in like the 27th film, we'd be like, that's weird. He hasn't come up like ever before, but it's like this guy that everyone, okay. But
Yeah, this show, along with WandaVision, really sets up the idea that they will happily make things up that existed retroactively, just to have really whatever they
just
want
have their
for whatever
story, yeah.
reason.
that's what
Yeah.
Captain Marvel was, right? That's just like, it was just stapled
yeah.
on. It's like, nah, we're
Yeah.
having this too. You're like,
Also, yeah,
Oh.
she's the reason why they're called the Avengers. It's like, is that right? Yeah.
So, the reason I'm saying all this, of course, is that that's kind of the history, and then we are told that they kind of cracked some sort of serum, kind of, with Howard in is that the 90s? Yeah, 91.
Yes.
So, that is taken, and then they make a bunch of super soldiers out of it, but they were unstable, like, they're scary, they're beating up the scientists, oh god, and then they get put on ice. And so that's basically it. But now this show's saying, actually... And this is from what I remember from this episode and from the one we get down the line, episode 5. There were more tests done. Now, this is the thing. I want to go piece by piece with this so that we can all accept maybe what we think is okay and what we think isn't in terms of trying to add to this universe. So, more tests were done, more serums were made, more experiments with people were done. Do you guys have any issue with any of that?
I'm okay
Well, who
with
did
doing
them?
Yeah.
experiments. Yeah.
Yeah.
But who?
There might be
Yeah,
a
who?
Presumably...
exact-
Well, Isaiah makes it sound like the American government, question mark, vagueness, but it would have to be S.H.I.E.L.D., presumably.
Or I guess Hydra within Shield.
Yeah, that's definitely worth considering, right? So it would, because this is the thing, if we were all in S.H.I.E.L.D. when all the stuff in Cap 1 happened, I would probably be like, so what of Erskine stuff do we have left? Must have had papers, data and,
And you do
must
take
be
a lot of his
something.
blood inside of that movie to experiment on, so I'm guessing like they were trying to
Blood of my
re-engineer
blood.
it.
And so, yeah, I would just be like, I think that we can try, we could say, if we were building the story from without having any movies yet, that, yeah, they would probably continue working on it. And it's kind of established that in Civil War that they eventually cracked something, not a good serum because it's unreliable, in the 90s. It's like, does that line up? It's like, I guess so. Without Erskine, who was revolutionary, like, yeah, they have a huge amount of trouble getting this to work again. However, we are told that they created a whole bunch and they experimented with a whole bunch of dudes. And they sent all of these dudes on a mission. Now, according to Isaiah, a couple of them straight up died, a couple of them were unstable, and a couple of them it actually worked, and he's one of them. Unfortunately, loads of them were captured behind enemy lines, and so the government, or S.H.I.E.L.D., or whatever, panicked, like, oh fuck, they've got our super soldiers, we best blow them up to get rid of the evidence. That seems a bit weird.
That's same. It seems like they're trying
Why
to
would
make.
you want to hide it? Yeah.
It seems, especially when Captain America is going to be so front and center.
Well, I'm going to bring that back in because I think there's more problems with this, right? So, like, we're supposed to believe that they wanted to kill them all so that there's no evidence of them having existed. Now, if you were so obsessed with them never being captured, why would you have dropped them all out there without having like tested them at home? Been like, can you guys survive in
Right.
stressful environments? Can you do blah, blah, blah? Instead of just being like, I don't know, throw them out, see what happens. It's like they've been captured. Oh, kill them, I guess. What?
Right, and if it turns out that Isaiah was a successful case, why the fuck would you leave him with your opposition? Why wouldn't you try to get your property, quotation marks, your property
Yeah.
back?
And remember, Isaiah leads a one-man mission, I think, or a selection to get them out, and he's successful. It's like, wow, why didn't S.H.I.E.L.D. just do it? Why didn't America just do it? Why did they just get their people out? They're really important.
Because he used
Not
the
only
bestest ever, and only
Not
he
only
could do
that,
it.
he leads this mission to rescue them, and then he gets thrown in jail for that specifically.
Well,
That's what he says.
I'm going piece by piece. I'm getting there.
Oh, sorry.
So that I find all of that hard to believe is kind of my point, that they wanted to kill him, and he's like, I was a hero. And as Fringy pointed out when we were watching it, ooh, that's eerily close to Steve's story, if you remember. He goes and does a mission to
Yeah.
save people when he was told not to.
Yeah.
That's probably deliberate. Anyway, he comes back and he's like, they put me in prison. It's like, oh shit. Well, you know, I wouldn't want to quibble over whether or not they would be allowed to, like, legally with how he's broken orders. The fact is they did mean things to him, which I found strange. And then you roll it back, it's like, wait, how did they get these powers again? Like, what was the nature of it? It's like they were told they were getting tetanus shots, but they were actually getting, like, the super soldier serum. It's like, huh. They didn't lie to Steve. Like,
I'm
why?
guessing that might be to mirror the thing that happened in like the 70s, wasn't it? Where a bunch of people were lied to that they were going to get like some sort of a vaccine, but it was actually like an experiment being run to figure out like the biology of African Americans or something, some crazy like secret government project, I think.
The thing is,
I
he
think
never
that's
makes it
what,
clear if all of the soldiers were black or not. He just says that they were soldiers.
Yeah, it's unclear, isn't it?
Which the show relies on a little bit, and I actually do think is cowardly. Like, they want to push the race stuff, but they also be like, oh, we better not go too far. Like,
Yeah, right.
we can't
Like-
straight out say, like, yeah, America murdered.
You got to ease them into it before the final essay. Yeah.
Like, were they testing on black people specifically? Because, oh, well, no one's going to give a shit about these darkies. Let's just use them as test subjects. Even though with the Winter Soldier program, I think, wasn't there like multiracial super soldiers?
Well, that was in the 90s.
Like, in Win-
Gals too.
Yeah, one of them was a girl, at least.
Yeah.
Again, though, that was in the
Oxygen
90s, so they would just
okay.
argue it's a different time, you see. 90s were more progressive.
Yeah, they keep proceeding on, like, they rely on the audiences, like specifically the Marvel audiences view that the government is bad, and they just rely on that and expect them to fill in the blanks with their own, with their own like distrust of the government instead of just explaining the shit.
Yeah, a lot of the show relies on the proverbial evil they. You know,
for
they
sure.
did this.
more problems come in with how, like, Falcon doesn't even bother throughout this entire season being like, Isaiah, who do you think did this and why? And then we can talk about, because I happen to know that S.H.I.E.L.D. were completely infiltrated by evil German Nazis who were doing all kinds of experimentation, and that we actually squashed them. And so, sorry about all of that shit, but that might have been them and not, like, strictly America. Like, can we go over a lot of the because you seem like a very bitter old man as a result of the things that happened to you, which is natural. I just, maybe it's worth clearing up. Maybe you'll feel better about your country if you knew that it wasn't necessarily your country that did this to you. I don't know. There's lots of things that don't get talked about because it's a very simplistic sort of this accepted, and you're like, okay. So I just found it a little bit weird, I guess. Like, they have all these, let's presume they had, like, serum A, B, C, D all the way through to Z, and they're like, we're gonna inject a bunch of dudes with this and send them out and just see what happens. It's like, that seems like a really dumb fucking experiment. I don't know. Like, think of the, how do you don't have
I feel like
control.
as important as the serum is, we'd really be keeping a close eye on all this stuff and be super careful.
A waste of your resources in the whole point of the test. Like, wouldn't you want to keep them close, try to figure out like why it worked and how you can potentially replicate?
Exactly.
You would have them in labs and controlled environments for months, if not years,
and you have
to
them
study the long-term effects of it.
You give them all a punching bag, and you're like, everybody approach and attack the punching bag, and then we'll monitor you. You don't throw them all out randomly, right? And then you have like, oh, patient A, C, and F came back. The rest died. And you're like, did the rest die because of the fucking serum? It's like, well, they were shot, so I don't know.
This is fucking Umbrella Corporation style of test subjects,
And for something so important,
just throw them into combat immediately and just see what happens.
Yeah, so really, really weird. But then gets even weirder, I would say. So he comes back, and they all get jailed because it's a big spooky secret they don't want anyone to know about. It's like, that's weird. Steve was very public. Even the operation was. And at this point, while Isaiah was in prison, Steve was being used for like promotional stuff. It's like they wanted people to know he was a super soldier and stuff. It's like, I'm just like, okay. And it's like, well,
weird.
Well, Isaiah was
change of
black,
heart.
and you're like, yeah. I guess I'm just a little bit lost on this. And
But why would they have, if that's the attitude they had, why give it to a black person in the first place?
Exactly. Why would you waste that good shit on a darkie? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, so he can feel like he's being slighted, and because he's black, so he can like stage a whole mutiny against your dumbasses. Yeah, that's smart. That's really fucking smart.
The concept of like black war heroes like isn't it's not like it was ever covered up in the past. Like, did you not have like entire squadrons of black airmen that were widely celebrated?
The show
in World
accounts
War
for
II.
this. The show accounts that if you remember in episode 5, I think, he says a bunch of those red tails went up there, and yet when they came home, there was burning crosses on their lords. There you go. Because they were racist people.
So that means the government.
What's that got to do with the institutions, though?
Well, fucking institutions are even more racist. For you even paying attention.
About all the people who aren't racist and supported them.
But I know also, like, wouldn't that have been more prevalent in this? What about the guys who came from like Chicago or New York or something? I'm sure that they got treated better.
No, their lawns in their apartment buildings, their lawns had flaming crosses on it too.
But I guess my question would be, what is the government to do about that?
Well, what they're doing now, lock down racists, block them from Twitter. That's the way to do it, man. They just didn't have Twitter back then, so
I don't know why they chose to do.
It's weird, and you sort of just, it doesn't quite line up. You're like, oh no, I get what you're going for messaging wise. I'm just trying to figure it all out in the narrative now, because my world is getting turned upside down, and scrambled. Like I'm just trying to figure out where all this timeline stuff came from.
What is the timeline?
This is what happens when you have an objective at the end that doesn't line up with what you have to work with, and so you just try and bend everything around it to make it work, and it never does. Like eventually, it just gets to that point where you're like, no, this doesn't make any sense in the context of this world.
And so, Isaiah is then in prison for 30 years, which takes us from, obviously, I guess, it was late 40s to late 70s, and then he's released? He's not released. Yeah, he escaped because they faked his death.
Yeah, he said this nurse, like, made up some papers for him or some shit, or let him go, whatever.
Yeah, like, do we get to know anything about her, like the context of that, or is it just like,
No.
oh, it's just a nurse?
They need
someone pity on him.
If you think about it this way, Drigger, it's like, well, he's describing how he was just permanently imprisoned and experimented on. So how's he in this house? Like, he got out. Someone got him out. Got up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, he got out.
You know, my assumption there was like, okay, that whoever this nurse was, she is going to become a character, or some character who's already in the show will get revealed to be her.
Well,
and she's been working somehow to help him.
Here's an additional level of interest I have. This thing, this story just doesn't line up to me. So he apparently met Winter Soldier at some point during his tenure as like super strong soldier man. But if you remember his story, he was injected. He went out. His soldiers several of his friends were captured. He was told you can't free them. He did. He came back and was imprisoned. So they only let him out to fight the Winter Soldier, presumably.
Yeah, it was in Korea, wasn't it?
So they did. When was that? Which, if we can try and find a timeline now.
Well, Korea was the 1950s, so like 56.
Yeah.
So he would have been released temporarily in his 30 years of imprisonment to fight Winter Soldier. Yeah, like we are supposed to believe that. And he didn't do anything to escape or make noise or anything. He did his job. He beat the fuck out of the Winter Soldier. He tore his arm off, apparently, which, by the way, right, if you say so, I guess. Yeah, and then he went back and they imprisoned him again. It's like, seems like a weird timeline.
You don't get it, Mala. He had the slave mentality. They beat him down emotionally.
Well, this is the weird thing. It's like they wanted him for his blood, right? They were farming him, and it's like, wait, if his blood was like so... God, can you imagine how much blood they got out of him, by the way? 30 years of pumping that shit every day. It's like tanks of it.
Eventually, come up with some form of a breakthrough after going through all that much blood. It's like, dude, something's got to help.
Yeah, either you come through with a breakthrough, or the other side's like, literally, we've got the silos of this shit. We don't need it anymore. You can release him.
It's just gratuitous amounts of blood now. But yeah, it's like you obviously had a serum that more or less worked, and you found a test subject in him where it worked fine, and he's perfectly healthy. Surely with those two things in 30 years to play with, you would make some kind of progress. But nah.
Yeah,
they just gave up.
They tell us that there wasn't any progress made. However, they kept the blood because the guy who makes the serum now says that it was the blood that gave him the breakthrough. Like, wait, they just had the silos of blood frozen, and they just passed it over.
And this guy's the only guy who came up with a breakthrough. None of the teams that were working on this anything with the blood.
It is. This timeline is so strange, and it's just to shove specific payoffs at specific times. Because the other thing I was wondering is, like, wouldn't they want to farm Steve's blood? The, like, top tier, like, perfect... And you know what? If they said, hey, Steve, as he's doing some of the missions, can you please just, like, bloodlet a little? Because we need to basically try and get this formula back. We need to help more people. We need to get more soldiers. We need to win the war. I think he'd be okay with it.
Yeah. Like I said, instead of the first Avenger, he actually does, like, they draw a lot of blood from him. So it's like, why not just keep doing that? Like, his was like the perfect experiment. It worked. So why not use his blood to recreate it?
Isaiah's was apparently perfect as well, but they just had a constant tap. They erased his entire... That was the funny part for me, when they were like, they erased every last scrap of me from history. That's why you've not heard of me. You're like, okay.
No paperwork, no, like, research, like, no research papers, no numbers, nothing.
So, another question I have is, Bucky knows where he lives. How?
Be found in a file that erased
Like,
from history.
What kills me is he just randomly tells Sam this, like, there's something you need to see. Like,
Yeah.
why? Why?
Because they find out that they're the super people, and so, yeah, Bucky somehow decided, you know what's likely? The blood they drew from him across those 30 years back when it started 1940s is likely been used to synthesize a new serum, so we need to talk to him. He'll know nothing useful, and then we'll just move on. So yeah, it's all garbage. And so you're like, why? Why did you do any of this? And it's like, you have Falcon say, you're telling me there was a black superhero this whole time and nobody knew? And you're like, wait.
Why are you outraged about this, Sam?
It's like, Sam, why did you phrase all of that way? What the hell? Because when we first watched it, I was like, oh, I'd just be outraged that a human being was locked in a fucking cage and bled every day. Not that he was black. Like, that's a strange...
Exactly.
But okay.
And you know damn well they were not doing this specifically on black people, like just black people. You know that. Come on, Sam. Come on.
Dude, I
use your
doubt,
brain.
I doubt they even needed to just use, like, black people like cattle or whatever. It's like, can you imagine during wars, you're like, oh, we're experimenting to make people super strong and super fast to help in the war effort. Any volunteers? I think you'd have quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Like, fuck yeah. I could be like Captain America. It's like, well, sign this, you might die. Just like he may have died, like he could die too. I'm still pretty sure you'll get loads of sign-ups. Especially people who want to fight, but they're like Steve, where they're too short or too scrawny or whatever. Or they have like, you know, any kind of, like the really bad vision, or maybe bad, just things that disqualify you. And before you can recover from this, before you can discuss it, before you can deal with any of this, a cop car shows up.
Oh my god.
And it's like,
this was physically painful to watch, how contrived it was.
It's like,
It's beautiful.
we just dealt with all of that, and it's like, it's really hard to try and reconcile everything. You just changed the entire history to do with soldier serum and stuff. It's like, hey, this black guy bothering you?
And then another guy comes out and it's like, oh, wait, Bucky, you've got a warrant out. You're coming to jail.
So,
like, it takes a really long time to figure that part out, too.
Well, yeah.
Like, if they wanted to impress me, they would have been like, as soon as they roll up, Sam thinks they're going to go to him and start antagonize him. But they're like, no, Mr. What's Sam's last fucking name again?
Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, is this abrasive cracker bothering you? And there's a warrant out for his arrest. Then I would have been like, okay, fine, whatever. But they had to like do the racial thing first and then say Bucky had to go to jail. Like, shut the fuck up. Just shut up.
What were they doing exactly? They were just walking across the
I
street.
think the thing I find awkward in the whole scene is that there are two people arguing in the middle of the street, and then a cop car rounds the corner. It's like, oh, why are you two arguing in the middle of the street?
Yeah,
the cars are meant to be on the street, not people.
Instead, their first thought is, this white man, he's being attacked by this horrible black man. We gotta save him.
Yeah, and you think they'd recognize Sam on the spot, but no.
Well,
no, it takes them a little while to figure that out.
Those two
especially the cops.
Those two are incredibly famous.
Yeah, particularly they're there to apprehend Bucky, aren't they? Because he missed his he missed his counselling thing, so they've got to bring him in. That's like the terms of his parole.
He has a-
So they are already there looking for him to arrest him. It's like, who's he likely to be hanging around with? Ah, yes, that Falcon guy.
Dude, it is so blatant. Not only should they instantly recognize them fucking anyway, but when they go like, oh my god, dude, that's a fucking guy. And he's like, oh shit, oh my god. It's like, oh. You're like, yeah, it's lampshading again. The show is like, see, they probably should have known. And it's like, yeah, show, they probably should have. What's going on? Why are you doing this? Like, oh, well, we want to have our payoff. Which, by the way, as I established, he should be going to jail for a bunch of things, Bucky. He's potentially going to jail here because he missed his fucking therapy appointment. Like, wow.
On the plane with Sam, if like there's a warrant put out for his arrest if he misses one of his psychiatry appointments, it's like, wow.
And yeah, and so that's that, and so yeah, a lot of people were just like,
Contrived.
God, is this the show? You're like, this is the show. Unfortunately,
This is exactly the show.
And you'd think
Also, you're not
after
going to get
half-
pulled over in Baltimore for walking across the street. People jaywalk all the goddamn time in Baltimore. I lived there for several years. The road is the sidewalk in Baltimore.
well,
Like, that's not
okay,
a
well,
thing.
that clarifies that thing then. I assumed it was really bizarre when people are just arguing with each other in the middle of the road.
No, Baltimore is a very strange place, and people just like randomly cross the street all over the place. There are no crosswalks. It's just chaos.
Hey, that's accurate. That's neat.
there you go. I'm not sure what to talk about first with this stuff, the therapy session itself, or the fact that Walker not only releases Bucky from the annoying therapist, but also like clears him for duty because he knows that he's very, very useful and would want that. And he even does like Walker does a gesture of like, yep, it was me. I did it. Like a sort of, yeah, you know, I know it's a really nice thing I did, but nobody cares and nobody appreciates
Really
it.
nice. He's like getting him out of a jam, man. Yeah, Walker. That's nice.
Gets him out of jail and approves him to go on missions. That's a godsend for Bucky. That's everything he wants. He doesn't care though, because it's Walker. Walker sucks. Just once again adding to the frustration of these fucking characters. And then comes the therapy session, which is joke, until we finally get for what they're actually in the fucking scene for, which is Falcon's annoyed at Bucky, and Bucky's annoyed at Falcon. It's like, why? Because if Steve was wrong about you in the Shield, he was wrong about me.
Yeah, just says it. Says it overtly. That was great.
As soon as
I
I
was so
hit
happy with that scene.
Yeah, as soon as we hit it, it's like, everyone's gonna fucking boom over this scene if they like the show. They'll think this is
Yeah,
amazing.
the tone is all over the place. Like they want to be serious, but they want to have their Marvel yuckety yucks. And fuck you. Can't have both.
I feel like this was squeezed out of Bucky's brain by the writer. It was like, we've got to get people understanding what the arc's going to be ready for episode 5, because we have just not got the time. We got so much action to put in. And yeah, he just comes out and says something that I think would be a really interesting sort of journey to put him on, but we didn't do any work for this. Like,
And it stops there too, because as soon as he says that, the Falcon is just an asshole, and it's like, cool, are we done here?
Well, this picks up in the halfway through episode 5, where they talk with when they have the shield. That's where this conversation continues. Until then, everything's on pause.
It's fucking hell, man.
I don't know if there's any more commentary for it, because I think a lot of people will be like, what was wrong with it? Like, it's super overt. It's just not delivered in any, like, kind of what I would feel to be a natural way. I like the idea that Bucky rides a lot on Steve for his identity, because he's the one that, like, brought him back over and over again and stuff. So, very dependent on whatever Steve has said about him to be really important. I just don't like that he rolls it out with like, barely getting poked about it. Like, this is some deep stuff that I don't think he would even want to say.
Yeah, this is the problem, is they say such personal things in these small moments, and then the rest is just flooded with jokes. So it's like, it doesn't feel like this material's being fleshed out. It's just like you get...
Well, we're at episode 2, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Also, that's like, maybe he was wrong about me too. That's kind of the subtext, not the text.
Yeah,
Or you would think so if it was good.
Oh, well, the instant thing that we talked about when we watched the episode was you cut the line in half at most. You have him say, if he was wrong about you, then... and you could even cut it earlier than that and ... it, and he looks down, or he says it in any way that's slightly more subtle, that you give us, the audience, a chance to think about what he might have been wanting to say.
Because, you know, it is a common thing in writing that characters don't, when just in real life, that sometimes people don't say exactly what they mean.
No.
In fact, it's actually pretty common that people don't express exactly what they mean.
Often
Well,
have to...
you know, it's what they're afraid to say that often has more meaning and more significance. So yeah, like you pointed out, Moller, you know, like you can have him trail off there, and that's fine. It's easy enough to infer what he's thinking from that. But you also get the fact that his character is afraid to say it.
Then the audience actually has to lean in and try to figure out what people are thinking and feeling instead of being told exactly.
There's so much of this just, well, it's like Batwoman, where you've got characters standing in hallways talking about their feelings. You know, it's just that, but with a Marvel budget.
Yeah, and they knew they had to do this stuff, otherwise they've got no character, quote-unquote. And that's kind of the lame part of all of this, is that this is considered good enough by so many people. Not only good enough, but great. Like, oh my god, it's phenomenal that we had this such a real moment from Bucky. What do we have as references to, like, support this sort of journey? Not much. And the episode 5 discussion is really unsatisfying as well, because Bucky basically gets told, you shouldn't lean all your identity on Steve. Like, yeah, probably. And then he's like, right, and stop avenging, start amending. And then he walks up to Yuri and he's like, sorry about your kid, I killed him, I didn't mean to. And that's it.
Not even I didn't mean to, I had no choice.
I was so disappointed. Like, God, it's Bucky Barnes. This is the character that almost everyone is like, oh, I'd love to have him to write for, because there's just infinite potential. There's so much to work with. It's such a, like, you can make so many stories. And he's like this, he is the sidekick in this whole season.
Mm-hmm.
And then, to top off this wonderful fucking episode, Walker is like, hey guys, you know, we saved your lives, we're totally cool with you, we try to pick you up, we're on board, we got you out of jail, it's all good. What do we have? We should work as a team and find Carly. And they literally tell him, fuck you, you've got no information, we're free agents, we're gonna go work on our own.
Yeah.
They're so stupid, I hate it.
And then...
The show has given us no reason to like these guys.
No.
I mean, it's entirely based on us being, you know, knowing them from the movies and liking those characters. But if it was just, if you came into this show cold, you'd just be there like thinking, these guys are complete dicks.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, why would I support them?
The thing is, I liked them from the previous movies, but when I watch this, I'm like, this isn't even the same characters. It's just like
I don't think so. And yeah, like Falcon's logic that threw me for a fucking loop when I was watching the show, because like I said, the world building doesn't make any sense. He's like, you guys, when you go anywhere, when you do anything, you've got to get approval. We don't. I'm like, how? How are you using government technology, government like weaponry, without the government's permission on where you can go? This sounds like a fucking political disaster. You just arrive in countries with like USA vehicles just doing whatever you want? Like, no, we know this isn't true. We watched Civil War. You can't get away with this. And they're like, nah, we're free agents. Fuck you.
They don't work underneath any agency whatsoever. They don't have any authority to respond to, like any supervisor, nothing. They plan their missions, judge, jury, and executioner, apparently. It's like, wow.
And if they are... Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was done.
If they are free agents, then is he paying for all of this out of pocket? Like,
nope.
I thought he was broke.
It has to be the government.
Well.
They ruined it when he had on that huge like plane that he jumped out of for Munich. It's like, the government paid for that. They would never do the... Who? Would they honestly be like, hey Falcon, if you want, you could just go ahead. That's fine. It's not like the world is strapped for resources and accountability right now. It's fine. Do whatever you want. The funny thing is, I think it would be the reverse. I think Captain America and Hoskins, Battlestar, whatever, they would probably be able to operate with relative ease. They'd be like, we need this to go here. They might not even have to say why. They'd be like, it's a part of our investigation, we're doing blah, 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 we need to go here. It's like, yeah, we'll get the sanctions you need. Free agent man, be like, hey, government, can I borrow a plane? Be like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like, There we go. Even if they said like, "Oh, we're searching for the flag smashers, going to stop them," it's like that's nice, but you're a free agent. We only come to you when we have a contract. Otherwise, fuck off.
Especially when he's kind of sympathetic to their cause and makes it quite known that he's kind of sympathetic to their cause.
And they could have
Just
gone away
not
with
the
it
methods.
if they'd integrated maybe with Pepper. They were like, they get their resources from her, and she's well. Then there's the money issue. Like it can't work. I'm sorry, it
Well,
can't work.
that's why, then potentially you've got a good setup for Zemo, where it's like, oh, this guy's insanely wealthy, and so we need his resources and his jets and stuff to be able to fly around the world. We need his help to do that. We don't just need him for information. We actually need him to support us.
Yeah, that just ends up being what they use him for writing-wise, but the characters didn't even seem to be aware that that's what they would need him for until he just supplies it.
No, exactly. Like, he just happens to have it, but it's a surprise to them, yeah. It's like, whoa, you're rich, you've got a jet? I didn't know that.
Do you guys remember the scene where the flag smashers try to escape, and they make this really emotional scene where this guy is like, "I gotta die to save the court." I was sitting like,
"Oh my god, I hate that."
So unnecessary with like how this flames. It's like they had plenty of time, dude. Just needed to add some.
It added no time. It did nothing.
Well, yeah, if you just tossed down the lamppost earlier and then got on the plane, he'd be fine. But no, he's like, "I must run at them."
Why are we playing sad music here?
I don't know.
He could have run away too.
This random dude that we know nothing about. Like, why should I feel
who was
sorry for him?
also,
Wait,
I guess we're not there yet, right? But at the end of the episode, it's this one, right, where they burn the people.
I think that's the end of episode 3.
Yeah, it's the next episode.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. But still, these guys have been beating up our good guys and stealing stuff.
Well, it's just a little confusing because we're just like, this guy sacrificed himself for the cause. Like, I don't know who these people are.
I don't know what your cause is. Your cause is a world without borders. It's like, what does that mean? What is the end of your? What is the end point of like where you're like, all right, mission accomplished.
One world, one people.
It's just there is one government.
It's not just
can we talk
that,
about
like,
this because
their real gripe is that there was so much more resources during the blip because half the population was missing. So it's like, okay, there's loads of empty houses, so all the homeless got places to live, and that's all great. But now, obviously, everyone's been returned, and those resources are scarce again. And they're fighting this terror campaign to try and reverse that. But like, how? Are you going to force half the world's population to kill themselves or something?
There's going to be the big problem of I am willing to bet that more than half of the world like the idea of nations.
Yes.
In fact, it's probably more than half. It's probably more like 90%, if not more than that. But also, when you achieve your goal, what does that look like? Because I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but as it stands right now, it's going to be pretty logistically impossible for one government to oversee the whole world effectively. There's kind of a reason why a lot of big countries have states. Even small countries have states. Doesn't Germany have like 10 or 15 states? It's just, you need to start figuring out, all right, how do we address the problem in this area? Okay, that's still a big area. How do we address the problem in this area? And then all of a sudden you have states again. Like, I don't see this end outcome here working for them.
Well, that's the thing. The GRC is already kind of what they want. What they want the GRC to do, though, is give more resources to people of their choice, not the GRC's choice. That's it.
And it's so bizarre because you would think that, half the population blipping back into existence after 5 years of adjusting to the new paradigm would throw everything into chaos and there wouldn't be enough resources for them, period. Like, there just is not enough. But they act like there are, they just haven't been giving it to them.
Well, that's my point. It's
that
like
doesn't make any fucking sense.
They want a fairer redistribution of non-existent resources, and I just don't understand how that's meant to work.
Here's an
and how does killing them help?
But
how do they meant to know who to give them to?
It's not even just that. The show, I think the show believes they make an argument, but I'm sitting here like, oh, they're really stupid. Like, not the writers, Carly. Carly's like, you have this place. It's got 6 months worth of resources in here, and you're just sitting on it. I think the writers were like, yeah, see? So there are some resources that aren't being used. I was just sitting there like, six months? Well, yeah, you're going to need more. So say, for example, there's a meal. And you go, that's a day's worth of food for someone. You're like, yes. So you probably want more than 1 meal per person, presumably. So if you have 6 months worth at this compound that's being spread presumably through this city or something, that'll last them some time, but they're going to need more. And Carly's like, no, you shouldn't have it at all. It's like, what? How do you figure this out? What are you thinking?
It feels like it's one of the consistent through lines when you watch this show is like, whoever wrote this show, I don't think that they understand how the military works. I don't think they understand how like supply chains works. I don't think they understand how governments work.
No.
Oh, they don't.
It's fascinating. It's so
Absolutely.
unreal to watch a show where at the end of it, they're like, and I guess we'll get to that later. It's like, I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing. It's like, it's not. Like,
That's the most baffling line I've ever heard in my goddamn life. I cannot believe he said that unironically.
yeah,
in
I
this
don't
show.
know. And maybe that helps me. It's like, you know what? If I was talking, imagine if you had an engineer who's like, yeah, so we need to put some support beams up here to make sure that we can keep the balcony stable. It's like, I don't understand how any of this works, and I don't think I want to. I want a giant, like, 10-foot long swimming pool over the top of my house. It's only 6 feet. Oh, wait, a 10-foot. Wait, no, I need to rethink. That's all right. Go ahead. I totally
But
destroyed my
the
own.
hero of the supposed hero of the show says in the final culminating like monologue he has that like, you know what, maybe I don't understand how complicated this situation really is, but maybe that's a good thing because now I can be idealistic.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Well, one of
the
the
whole
one of
What
the
is that?
one of the
That whole
officials hits him with a
conversation-
straight up like logistical question. He's like, what are we supposed to do with all these people that have come back and they've found like someone else living in their homes? Do we just turn them out on the street? And Falcon just stares at him like he's got no response to
Nope.
it. And then
It's
he just
like-
kind of
like-
moves on. It's like you can't just fucking brush past
Well, he
that.
tells him to do
That's
better.
the whole
It's like-
reason that this
Do better.
problem
Like-
exists.
Do better.
That whole conversation between the whole conversation between the GRC guy and him was like a fucking disappointed parent talking to a child.
Yes.
It's
Yep.
like
Yeah.
they're trying to fucking reason with you and tell you like, look, this is a complicated situation. It's like a parent trying to tell a kid like, yeah, I can't buy you that new phone because our financials are in the shit right now. And like the kid's like, well, I want it. I fucking want it. But I
Yeah.
can tell you like financial, this is a complicated situation right now. You can't have it. And they
I
could say,
think,
well, I might not know I don't know how complicated it is, but that's okay.
Yeah, his
Like-
entire speech is just nothing but an appeal to emotion. Just the
Yes.
most
Well, I think-
manipulative garbage.
I think that's what my most charitable interpretation to them would be the logic of, because I don't understand how complicated it is, I'm deriving my position from a base principle. But the problem is, my immediate thing would be, okay, Sam, let's walk through the scenario. You have a house, you own it. Like, you don't even have a mortgage, you own it. You disappear for a while. Somebody else moves into your house. You come back and there's somebody in your house. You had no means of getting them out in that time because you didn't exist. Who should have that house? And then he'd probably be like, well, I mean, I guess in that case, it should probably be the person who originally lived in it. It's like, okay, let's add a multiplier. They didn't own the house. It was a mortgage. And then the mortgage lapsed because of economic stuff that went wrong during that period and someone moved in. Who should own the house? That guy, the person who moved in, or the bank? And it's like, oh, it's a little more complicated. All right, extra modifier, the person who got snapped had kids. And then extra modifier, they're in this country and this is how the laws work. Extra modifier, like the economics, like, I don't know, something happened with their other assets. Extra modifier, they were really poor. And it's like, oh, so it is super fucking complicated, isn't it? Man, it sounds like it's really difficult. Like, this is actually a really difficult problem to deal with. That's going to be a logistical nightmare. There is no way that you're going to make everybody happy here. But you have to balance out who you make happy.
And I would want to mention
But
too,
just to real quick, just to get back to the scene we're on instead of jumping to the end, the whole reason they throw in that stupid goddamn line about how, they were just sitting on these resources and they just hadn't distributed them is because what would really happen in this world, as you know, described by the blip and everything, is that there just wouldn't be enough resources to go around.
No
And then
way, there would be food shortages, for
Well,
sure.
There'd be no way to make them evil for like not having resources for everybody.
That's the-
But since they
Plus-
just have them and they're sitting on them, they can be like, see, look, the evil they are keeping us from getting what we need.
I mean, does she even understand the context of this depot that she's bombing? Like, maybe
No.
the stuff had been placed there for like a period of time before it
Exactly,
was
that's what-
distributed out.
what I was
Maybe it's
talking
a
about.
storage depot. Maybe it's an emergency reserve where it's like, oh, if things get really bad, we'll tap into this. But you know,
so that's like yeah. To double up on what Fringy was saying as well. Then, so if Falcon was like, I control it now, I shall decide who gets the resources because I am pure of heart, and then the GRC people go, very well, you have complete control, go. And he goes, all right, how many resources do we have? Go 100, just for the sake of it, units. Like, all right, we need to get them to all of the biggest population areas that have the least amount of resources. Yep, okay, let's do it. Where should we send them specifically? Well, probably GRC sort of compounds in these areas. It's like, okay, how much should we send? It's like, well, if we've got 10 compounds, 10 of the 100 go out. He's like, we'll do it, Falcon. Definitely. Now, with each of these compounds, they have to send the one of their units out of their 10 to each of the surrounding areas to distribute. It's like, cool. Oh no, Falcon. He's like, what? He's like, what's going on? One of our compounds has been hit by flag smashers, and they're claiming that we've been sitting on these resources when we're trying to distribute them. Falcon, help, what do we do? We have to do better, right? We have to do better. And he's just like, we do have to do better. We have to listen to them. They have a point. Like, you motherfuckers haven't even taken... The GRC don't hate you. They're trying, okay? They don't want people to starve.
That is the most simplistic one. That's ignoring other logistical issues like, do you have the manpower to do this? What treaties, like how the laws changed in the years that you weren't here that you now need to rewrite, that need to go through their democratic processes. You're trying to like reinstitute the governments of all these different countries. You've got these places that have been sucked up. You probably got like so many cases that need to go before the Hague that is like, or like the international courts, that it's going to take you like years to clear through that backlog. The financial system probably doesn't work. There are probably some currencies that have totally just obliterated that probably need new currencies and then you need to get loans from like the IMF, like the International Monetary Fund. You need to get if they still exist. And it's like, all right, Sam, yeah, just do better.
Well,
it's like,
there's a hitch in your step there. You fucked up. If you remember in his speech, he said, we shouldn't be talking about this yet, but he says, with a phone call, you can feed 1 million people. So
yes, I was about to mention that. Or like you can flatten a forest. Monologue. Yeah, as if they have the power to just fix everything, but they're choosing not to. It's so childish.
Literally the child's view of the world. It's absolutely a child's view of the world.
I pulled up the episode. So he has a line where he says, you can move borders. It's like, no, you can't. Like, that is like number one in terms of international law is the idea that you have sovereignty over your country. The GRC can't just come in and say that territory belongs to them now. You just be like, nope, it's ours. We're sovereign. We're a sovereign state. We say what we own.
They're voting on the Patch Act is the big drama of this season. And they say the Patch Act is to reset the borders. And what I took from that was that, like, basically saying, hey, you know the border between, like, you know, fucking as simple as Wales and England? It's like, that's there. Okay, it's there. It's not something you just pretend doesn't exist. It's there. And then all the flag smashers are like, well, I wanted. I don't like that.
Isn't that what every war is about? Yeah. So the land that you control, if you can't control that land, you're basically not a sovereign state. Like the number of times where the demand for the ceding of territory has led to a war. It's almost countless. It's like, number one, if you can't even control the land that you claim is yours, then how do you claim to have any authority over it? It's like really important fundamental stuff to do with like the nature of the way that nations work. But this show is like, oh, you can just move borders around. And again, that's totally ignoring whether or not the people who live in those areas like the idea of becoming citizens of a different country. What if you're living in like a border town in France that gets swallowed up by Germany? Are you cool with that, or the other way around? Or if you lived in some northern town in America and get swallowed up by Canada, or vice versa, or like Mexico, would you just be cool with that? And like and it's like, oh, thanks, Falcon. You've just made me lose my whole land. Like, I'm now a citizen of a different country. I have less rights. I need to figure out. And then again, it's like, oh, Sam, are you going to be personally overseeing making sure that everybody becomes a citizen of whichever country they've been put in, that they now have to live in forever? Or, you know, they're going to have great difficulty leaving. You're probably going to destroy the property value of a lot of people's houses. If you move those borders, god damn, the housing market is going to just totally collapse.
But
it's almost like the world is really complicated.
They got to do better, okay?
Yeah, just do better. as if like the people who are being screwed over.
is-
Does anyone feel like the 5-year gap between like the snap and everyone getting restored was like a terrible
It
writing choice?
demolished
And it's just-
everything. Yeah.
It's just going to
Yeah.
cause them so many problems going forward.
Well, here's the thing. I think there's a way to make that stuff work, but what this movie really wants to do is have a social commentary on our current society and world. And the world post-blip is so very, very different from our current world.
Yeah.
That you can't have both. You can't fucking do
Well,
both. I'm sorry.
I think that's the thing, is it's basically unrecognizable. And like the rebuilding effort after World War II took a long time. It took a long time. And World War II killed a lot of people, but the snap is like half the world. It's like 50, I think it's like 50 times more people. It's catastrophic.
Yeah, and
Like
to
that-
clarify for
it's
anybody
over.
wondering, it's like it's more than half. It's a hell of a lot more than half what the blip
It's
did.
definitely more than half, yeah. The amount of wars and genocides and ethnic cleansings and suicides that are going to come after the snap, god damn.
Yeah, and the MCU doesn't
Imagine
have the...
coming back and finding out that your home was blown up by a bomb. You just teleport into the center of a collapsed building because your home doesn't exist because, I don't know,
the
like
MCU doesn't
another
have the
country
balls.
was-
They don't have the balls to tell that story. They just don't.
Well, that would be... What an interesting story.
Yeah.
Snapping back into a world that's unrecognizable, and you have to try and figure your way out from there. That'd be a cool idea, but again, they don't want to do that. They're like, well, you can move borders. It's like, do you know how many like, it's funny you would say this, considering how many issues have come from colonialism in Africa, when the main issue there was that they were just arbitrarily making borders without any consideration for the people who lived there and where they wanted to be a part of. It's amusing that you would do that. It's almost like you don't know anything about the world.
Yeah. The other line he threw in was you control the banks, like control.
Oh
like,
yeah, you control the bank, huh? Yeah.
it's such a
Just
like
print more money. Just print
Yeah, it's
more
not like-
money.
yeah, I mean, there's never been a bad instance of just printing more money. What's that Weimar Republic? What's that Zimbabwe? What's that like?
It's kind of like this show is almost like a inadvertent destruction of like modern social justice, because everything that stands for, this show inadvertently just demolishes by how fucking stupid it is.
But they think
Yeah.
he's making a point at the end. The show thinks he's right.
Yeah.
Have you seen Twitter?
Yeah.
They lit up. They were like, that's one of the greatest speeches in history of filmmaking. It's like, what are you talking about?
You just watched a segment from Every Frame a Pause, or EFAP. Hosted by YouTubers Mahler, Rags, and Fringy, and joined by a cycling variety of guests across the internet, they critically analyze media with exhaustive detail while pausing at every single frame. Subscribe to Mahler's channel to catch new episodes live on Saturdays, and tune into the EFAP channel to see full episodes, movie and TV commentaries, and gaming streams. You can also subscribe here to EFAP Highlights for daily highlights, supercuts, and shorts. Links to all the relevant channels can be found in the description section below, as well as links to the original videos and ways to support the crew. Thanks for watching.